Mirae, after many calculated marriages, thought she had reached the pinnacle when she married Dohyun, a powerful businessman. But the marriage quickly turned into a nightmare when she discovered the shady relationship between her husband and her daughter. From there, everything began to fall apart. Mirae's plan for revenge not only cost her her fortune, but also her life and the life of the person she loved the most. Mirae was born into a poor family in a small town hidden in the mountains, where deprivation and misery were the norm for most people. Ever since she was a little girl, Mirae knew that if she wanted to change her fate, she had to leave this place. Her life of poverty had trained her to be a woman who did not accept failure, who did not give up in the face of adversity. She saw her mother, a woman who worked hard all her life on the farm but never had freedom or comfort. Those things were engraved in Mirae's mind and became the motivation for her to change her life. As she grew up, Mirae's natural beauty and sharp intelligence became powerful weapons to help her escape poverty. She knew that in this society, beauty and charm could open doors that talent or effort alone could not. And that's when she decided to use what she had to enter the world of wealth, where power and money were what she craved. Mirae's first marriage took place when she was only 20 years old, to a young, wealthy businessman from New York. The wedding was a dream for the girl from a small town. The lavish life, the high-class parties, and the admiration from those around her made Mirae think she had escaped her miserable past. But she soon realized that love and family happiness were not what she was looking for. When her first marriage ended in silence, Mirae walked away with a portion of her wealthy husband's fortune, the first step in the plan she had outlined for herself. The next marriages followed the same pattern. Each time Mirae chose a richer, more powerful man. She always knew how to charm them, making them believe that she was the perfect woman, the ideal wife. But what those men never understood was that Mirae was not looking for love. For her, marriage was simply a transaction, a tool to gain power and wealth. After each divorce, Mirae walked away with a larger fortune, and step by step, she built a lavish life that she could only dream of before. The big house, expensive jewelry, lavish trips, Mirae had it all. But deep down, she knew that it was never enough. Money and wealth were the only things she trusted, and she never stopped when she could have more. The marriages never lasted as Mirae refused to be bound by affection or family responsibilities. Now, at the age of 38, Mirae has gone through 4 marriages. Each time she ends up with more wealth, more power, but never feels fulfilled. She is not looking for love, something she considers unrealistic and unreal. For Mirae, love is just something for the weak to rely on, while power and money are what really matter. And then her 5th marriage to Dohyun, an older, wealthy but mysterious man, seems to be the pinnacle of her journey. Mirae thinks that this time she has achieved everything she has ever wanted. But she does not expect that behind Dohyun's powerful appearance are dark plots that she has never thought of. And this time, the game is not just about money or power, but also involves the darkest things of humanity. Mirae entered this marriage with the expectation of continuing her ambitious path, but she did not expect that this 5th marriage would be where she would have to face bloody choices to protect not only her assets, but also her life and the girl she loved. Dohyun was not like the men before. He was not young, not handsome, but he had one thing that Mirae had never seen in her previous husband's power. Dohyun was a veteran businessman, widowed and famous in the financial world. At 55 years old, he was not only rich but also had a series of relationships and influence everywhere. Mirae knew that if she could have Dohyun, she would have everything she had ever dreamed of, not just assets, but true power in the upper class. Their meeting took place at a luxurious party at a famous hotel in New York. Mirae had no intention of going further with Dohyun from the beginning, but when his eyes stopped on her, when he approached with a glass of wine in hand and a meaningful smile, Mirae realized that this was an opportunity she could not pass up. Dohyun was fascinated by Mirae's cold and mysterious beauty. At his age, he was used to beautiful women approaching him for money, but there was something different about Mirae that made him unable to take his eyes off. She was not only beautiful, but also sharp and intelligent. The stories they exchanged that evening did not only revolve around shallow issues such as finance or business, but also about art, philosophy, and distant dreams. Mirae was a woman who made Dohyun feel young again. Their conversation became the starting point for a relationship that grew deeper and deeper. Mirae knew how to keep just the right distance, not too aggressive but not too distant. She made Dohyun feel like he was the only one who could understand and protect her. It was a delicate game, and Mirae was a master at controlling it. When Dohyun proposed after a few months of knowing each other, Mirae knew she had won. She officially entered her 5th marriage, not only in the hope of gaining more wealth but also asserting her position in the world of power. Mirae's life seemed to have reached the pinnacle she had always desired, but deep down she was always on guard. Although Dohyun appeared to be very affectionate towards her, Mirae knew that he was not a simple man. After a lavish wedding ceremony held at a seaside villa, Mirae officially became Dohyun's wife. The media was flooded with images of the splendid wedding, where crystal chandeliers illuminated the space filled with nobles and top businessmen. Mirae entered her new life with the feeling that everything she had dreamed of was within her reach. But as soon as the final congratulations died down, Mirae began to realize that life after marriage with Dohyun was not as simple as she had thought. The first cracks appeared when Mirae moved into Dohyun's mansion. Not only was the house an architectural masterpiece, but it also bore the marks of the women who had lived there before her. From the interior decoration to the personal items, everything was reminiscent of Dohyun's ex-wives. Every corner of the house seemed to have traces of the past that Mirae could not shake off. Even though she was married to Dohyun, she never felt like she truly belonged here. Dohyun's hidden control began to show. Thinking that she would have the freedom to enjoy the lavish life and seize the assets that Dohyun promised, Mirae quickly realized that he did not share power as easily as she thought. All of Dohyun's assets were closely monitored, and every financial decision had to go through him. Mirae had no say in his work or assets, but was simply an ornament for him to display at important events. The feeling of losing control made her frustrated. Not only that, Dohyun had a strange and annoying habit. He required Mirae to always report every action of the day, from who she met, who she talked to what she spent. At first, Mirae thought it was just a rich man's management habit, but then she realized that it was hidden control. Dohyun not only wanted to take power in the family, but also wanted to know everything that happened around his wife. Mirae felt like she was imprisoned in a beautiful but suffocating villa. She used to think that if she married Dohyun, she would have everything, but the truth was that she had nothing but the title of wife. Power, property, everything was still in Dohyun's hands, and Mirae was just a beautiful puppet in his hands. At first, Mirae thought that this was a good opportunity for her daughter to have new experiences and better prepare for the future. Sora, with her pure beauty and innocent personality, always attracted the attention of everyone around her. Dohyun seemed to care for her sincerely and take care of her. However, over time, Mirae began to notice unusual behaviors in the way Dohyun treated Sora. He always seemed too worried, too close to her. One night, while Mirae was working in the office, she accidentally overheard their conversation. At first, it was just normal greetings, but Dohyun's tone gradually became gentle and caring as he complimented Sora's lovely appearance. Mirae, standing by the door, felt her heart beat faster. Dohyun's words made her feel uncomfortable and uneasy. Mirae decided to follow her husband. She began to notice that Dohyun often tried to approach Sora when she was not at home. He was always generous with the young girl, buying Sora expensive gifts without ever asking Mirae's opinion. Feelings of jealousy and anger rose in Mirae's heart, but she did not dare to confront him directly. If she discovered the truth, Mirae would have to face the fact that her husband was cheating on her not only with some other woman, but also with her own daughter. This was not only a betrayal, but also an unforgivable insult. The more Mirae observed, the more she realized that Dohyun had his own plans for Sora. He was not only attracted to her beauty, but also seemed to want to possess her in some way. This made Mirae not only jealous but also feel threatened. If things continued, Sora would become a real danger to Mirae's position in the family and her inheritance. Mirae could not accept that. The thought of taking action began to appear in Mirae's mind. She could not let Dohyun continue to deceive her. Sora was her daughter, and she would not let anyone, not even her rich husband, take advantage of her. Mirae knew that she needed to take control of the situation before things got out of hand. Mirae began to scheme. If Dohyun could deceive her, then she could deceive him. A dark plot began to form in Mirae's mind. She no longer thought of love or commitment, but only of power, wealth, and revenge. If Dohyun dared to threaten her position, he would pay in any way. Mirae was living in her fifth marriage, which she believed would be the pinnacle of ambition and success. But things were getting weirder and darker than ever. Dohyun, her rich and powerful husband, was no longer the honorable man she thought he was. His once caring expression for Sora, Mirae's stepdaughter, was no longer the protectiveness of a stepfather, but a lustful and depraved gaze. One morning, like any other, Mirae suddenly noticed that Sora had changed. The young girl, who was always cheerful and innocent, had now become quiet and often avoided her mother's gaze. Sora no longer talked and laughed as much as before, and she seemed to be avoiding being near Dohyun more and more and more. This change worried Mirae, but when she asked her daughter, Sora only said that she was tired and stressed because of her studies. Mirae tried to ignore her suspicions, but the signs became more and more obvious. Sora often stayed in her room, locked the door, and refused all inquiries from her mother. She also gradually became distant from Dohyun, no longer being close or respectful like before. The sudden change in her daughter's avoidance made Mirae begin to doubt. Mirae decided to clear this up. One afternoon, when she happened to see Sora coming out of the bedroom with a dazed face and fearful eyes, Mirae felt a cold shiver run down her spine. Something was wrong. Mirae couldn't bear the confusion in her heart any longer. Finally, she decided to install a secret camera in the house, silently monitoring all activities when she was away. Carefully, she placed the cameras in hidden corners of the living room, the hallway, and, most importantly, in Sora's private room. Mirae kept all this in absolute secrecy, not revealing it to anyone. After a few long days of waiting, Mirae felt her heart break when she reviewed the footage. While she was out on business, Dohyun often entered Sora's room, at first with the caring concern of a father, but gradually his actions became unpleasant and unusual. Through the screen, Mirae witnessed her husband's unacceptable gestures, gradually crossing the line with inappropriate intimacy, gentle words but possessive eyes. Sora seemed to be overwhelmed by fear, not daring to resist clearly. She occasionally tried to move away, but those feeble attempts were unsuccessful. The anxiety and fear were clearly visible on her face, making Mirae even more pained and helpless. Mirae stared at the screen, her heart pounding, her hands trembling non-stop, cold sweat soaking her entire body. She could barely breathe, unable to believe what she was witnessing. The man she once thought was the springboard for her fame and status had now become such a despicable person. This truth was not just a shock or a pain of betrayal, it was the deepest insult, tearing her soul apart, completely breaking her. The feeling of being deceived was not only because of love being betrayed, but also because her husband had taken advantage of Sora's trust and weak innocence to push the young girl into a terrifying situation with no way out. Mirae's mind was a whirlwind of mixed emotions. Anger, disgust, pain, and frustration swept over her like a raging storm. Every second on screen made Mirae's anger rise uncontrollably. She couldn't stand to see this bastard continue to hurt her daughter. Dohyun had to pay. Mirae decided to end him, not just for Sora but for herself. Mirae had put up with his manipulation and lies for too long, and now he had crossed the line of unforgiveness. She had a perfect plan. There was no way she could let an open confrontation happen, because Dohyun was not an easy man to deal with. He was rich, powerful, and acting rashly would only land Mirae in trouble. Instead, she decided to use the plan she had always thought of: kill Dohyun slowly, with the poison she had prepared. She began mixing poison into the health pills that Dohyun took every day. The medicine Mirae used did not kill immediately, but gradually impaired memory and affected the nervous system. Mirae took no time in her plan. She carefully studied the dosage and effects of the poison, making sure that Dohyun's symptoms came on as slowly and naturally as possible. The headaches were fleeting at first, but they gradually became more severe. He began to forget important appointments, events big and small that he had never missed before. One time, Dohyun even forgot his birthday, which made him believe that he was aging rapidly. Dohyun tried to see doctors, but all the test results were normal. The doctors concluded that his symptoms were just a sign of stress and aging. Mirae, in the role of a devoted wife, was always there to comfort and care for him, but inwardly she was laughing as her plan progressed as planned. Every day, she regularly mixed the poison into each of his tonic pills, carefully observing every small change in her husband's condition. Mirae did more than just impair Dohyun's memory. When Dohyun was not in a good mood, she began to fabricate false stories about his business. Mirae often pretended to be worried about the family's finances, pressuring them to prepare for future contingencies. She made up theories about protecting assets from legal risks, convincing Dohyun that signing the documents she had prepared was the best thing for the family. When Dohyun's memory deteriorated to the point where he could no longer distinguish reality from what Mirae said, she prepared a series of legal documents transferring assets to her name. Every time he signed the documents, he had no idea that he was handing over complete control to the wife he once trusted. However, Dohyun had rare moments of clarity. For brief moments, he seemed to realize that something was wrong. One time, Dohyun suddenly asked about the papers he had signed, which startled Mirae. But with her wisdom, she quickly soothed him by pretending to be worried about his health, making him forget his suspicions that had just arisen. Dohyun's confusion continued to increase as he began to panic about his reality. However, his mental decline made it difficult for him to connect the dots. The signs worsened, and Dohyun began to lose the ability to communicate clearly. Not only did he forget dates, but he even lost the ability to remember the people he was most familiar with. This made it easier for Mirae to complete her plan. One of the climaxes is when Dohyun looks at Mirae and no longer recognizes her. The person he once thought was his loving wife, now just a vague figure in his shattered memories. When Mirae finally got her hands on all the assets, Dohyun's breakdown also reached its limit. He no longer had the strength to resist, no longer had the consciousness to realize that he had been completely taken over. Mirae looked at her husband with a cold, emotionless gaze, no longer showing any mercy for the man she had once calculated to use to gain power. But what she did not expect was that, when everything seemed to be in her hands, another danger began to appear. Fragments of Dohyun's memories, which occasionally flashed in his mind, could be the sign that led to Mirae's downfall. Mirae thought everything was going well, but when she discovered the unsigned documents, she began to realize the flaws in her plan. Dohyun's rare glimmer of sanity could cause everything to fall apart if he realized what she had done. It was a surprise that Mirae could not have foreseen, and she understood that she had no time. The final dose of poison had been carefully prepared. This time, Mirae was sure it would end it all. Dinner proceeded with her false composure as she watched her husband drink the drugged wine. The dizziness came more quickly than before, and within minutes, Dohyun collapsed to the floor, his breathing ragged and weak. Mirae looked down at him, feeling a surge of excitement. She was closer than ever to her ultimate goal. As the poison began to take effect, Dohyun's body slowly weakened, his head throbbing and foggy. The sharp pains came in waves, but in the final moments before he fell into unconsciousness, his mind suddenly snapped open. Fragments of memories suddenly came together, pieces of a hideous truth slowly appearing in his mind. It was a painful realization. The wife he had trusted, the woman who had been by his side all this time, was not the companion he thought she was. Mirae deceived and poisoned him, day by day, drop by drop. Dohyun felt as if someone was squeezing his heart as the harsh truth was revealed before his eyes. Memories of the signs of his health gradually appeared in his mind. At first he thought it was just a natural sign of aging, but now horror filled his mind as he realized that it was all part of Mirae's cold-blooded plot. Not only did she want to take his property, she also aimed at his life. Anger and pain rose, overwhelming Dohyun's gradually weakening body. Although his body was exhausted, his spirit was filled with resentment. He wanted to stand up, face Mirae, demand justice for himself, but his body no longer responded to his commands. Cold sweat dripped down his forehead as his eyes met Mirae, who was standing in front of him, her eyes cold and emotionless. From that look, he understood that everything had come to an end, that Mirae had never loved him, and had always been calculating because of her ambition. Dohyun tried to stand up, his trembling hands gripping the edge of the table to pull himself up, but the dizziness was so severe that he almost collapsed. Mirae stood still, watching with a cold expression, as if his collapse had been predicted. In that moment, hatred flared up in Dohyun's heart. All love and trust vanished, leaving only hatred for the woman who had betrayed all his trust. Despite his exhausted body, Dohyun still gathered the remaining strength to rush towards Mirae. The confrontation began, each step slow and painful. He tried to grab her arm, but she was too agile and used to situations like this. Mirae dodged deftly, and then she saw the knife on the table nearby. Not a word was spoken, only tension filled the air as the two prepared for a merciless struggle. In his final desperation, Dohyun tried to block Mirae's advance, but his strength was gone. Every time he tried to pull her back, his bones and muscles seemed to give out. Pain shot through his chest, but his spirit continued to fight. He couldn't let Mirae win, couldn't let himself become a complete victim of her cruel plan. Mirae, sensing that Dohyun was losing his ability to resist, pushed him away with force. He staggered, losing his balance, and at that moment Mirae quickly grabbed the knife and rushed forward. In the chaos, as Dohyun tried to regain control, the blade slipped from her hand and accidentally stabbed deep into Mirae's chest. The pain came quickly and unexpectedly, causing Mirae to collapse to the floor. Blood from the wound spread everywhere. Both of them lay there, exhausted and silent. Dohyun looked into Mirae's eyes. There was no calculation or coldness now, only horror and regret. She had gone too far, and in the end, those very plots had come back to destroy her. Dohyun, lying on the floor, felt the growing weakness in his body. He couldn't move, but in his mind, all the anger had gradually dissipated, leaving behind a void. Even if he won this confrontation, he knew that his life had completely collapsed because of his mistaken trust in the woman he once loved. In the cold, blood-filled and silent room, Both of them were caught up in the whirlwind of their ambitions. Neither of them won. What was once a symbol of power and wealth now only left pain, regret, and a tragic end for both of them.